Hello to all my ham radio operator friends. This video is not going to interest the majority of you unless you happen to be a ham radio operator. If you're not, you can press stop now because this video will probably be of no use to you. Again, this is just for my ham radio operating friends. Well, so the disclaimer's out of the way. So what I did over the course of the past day or so is I didn't realize it, but you know, I of course, like most hams, have an amateur radio internet connected hotspot, and this of course is a very familiar hotspot, which I'm sure many of you are quite familiar with. This is a Pi-Star, so yeah, with a display, even though I never use it. I have another one that does not have a display. Again, I don't ever use the display. The display is essentially useless to me. I don't care about it. It doesn't matter. But I also have an Openspot, and I love both devices. I love the Openspot and I love the Pi-Star. They're great devices. I also have a Raspberry Pi 3B Plus in my house, which is dedicated. I have dedicated it alone to D-Star repeater, or to D-Star. It's not running Pi-Star. It's running the software that came before Pi-Star. It's running D-Star repeater, and I think I turned on that hotspot way back 2015. Maybe it was 2014. I don't know. It was maybe 2015. So I'm just going to go with 2015. That particular Raspberry Pi 3B Plus, the HDMI video output doesn't work on it, and it never has really. Everything else about the Raspberry Pi works fine, so I didn't send it back. I went ahead and used it. I hooked up a DV Mega to it, and it was one of my first DV Mega, by the way, and it's the non-upgraded DV Mega. I think it's below firmware version 3.07. So the only thing it can run that I'm aware of is D-Star repeater on a Raspberry Pi. So I pretty much dedicated it for that purpose. It's on its own frequency. It only runs D-Star repeater. It runs nothing else that I can remember, because in all the years I've had it, I last hooked it up to a computer monitor, and I connected to it back in like 2016, maybe. That's it. 5 years later, it's been running 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, every single day for the past, what, 5 or 6 years. It still works. I connected my IC91AD to it. I brought up reflector 1 Charlie. I did the same thing with my ID51. Brought it up. Works like a charm. I did that yesterday. So it still works after all of these years. I haven't done a thing to the device. It's just sat there and sat there and sat there all these years, running perfectly. So yeah, it really does work, and it really does run for the long haul. Okay, moving on to subject number 2. So it occurs to me, by the way, that particular hotspot is an on-demand PTT-enabled hotspot. I do not have any permanent reflectors or repeaters connected to it. I just bring up the reflectors and the repeaters when I want to connect to them, whenever I choose to. I usually leave it off, and then when I want to connect, I connect in. But that's not how I do all my hotspots, and I'm going to get to that right now. Okay, so I also have a Pi-Star. Well, I have 2 Pi-Stars. And these have the more modern firmware on board. I think it has firmware 4.1.4, and I think it has the interface, or let me see here, what does it say? It has the dashboard. I'm sorry. It has the dashboard of, let me go back to it, 2021 May the 17th. So just a few days ago, I upgraded the Pi-Star on both of these units. So yeah. Now, there was a problem that I discovered with my hotspots. The Openspot Pi-Star and even my D-Star repeater hotspot. There's a little bit of an issue. I encountered it tonight while I was listening to a local 440 repeater. And now I have my hotspots in one room in my house. They're right next to my recliner. And they're connected via Ethernet cable. I have both of my, like this Pi-Star I run occasionally, and I take it with me on trips. Same thing with this Openspot. But I run a different Openspot and a different Pi-Star 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And I run those hotspots permanently connected to certain talk groups and stuff online. Well, it goes without saying that the hotspot is going to be transmitting an amateur signal even when I may not necessarily be monitoring or listening. I may be listening to a different radio, I may be sleeping, I may be taking a nap, I may be meditating, I may be watching television, any number of things. I could even be playing on my Chromebook or some, online somewhere. What have you. Long story short, on that particular repeater that I was monitoring, it was an analog 440 repeater. And I was noticing that my one of my other radios, the radio that was picking up the analog ham radio repeater, was experiencing some interference or some reductions in the quality of the audio, which is analog. I'll just go ahead and tell you. I was using an FT65R, which is an analog 2-meter 440 radio, and I was listening in on a Collinsville 440 repeater, which is about 25 plus miles from here. So the signal's pretty good. It's not terribly weak. But I noticed that the signal kept dropping. It kept getting noisy and being interfered with. And I thought, well, what is causing this? What's happening? And then when I moved the radio around, the amount of hiss and noise that the radio was getting would change. And I thought, what in the world is going on here? And I immediately thought, well, okay, there's two possibilities. There is the possibility that the hotspots operating on the 440 band are causing interference, or the Wi-Fi router is interfering. By the way, I have my Wi-Fi router on low power settings, not the high power, the low power. I didn't really think that it could seriously be the Wi-Fi router because I have it set on the lowest settings possible. But I went into the dashboards of both of these, both my Openspot and my Pi-Star, and I discovered that they were operating at the maximum power output. And I didn't even realize it. I didn't really give it much thought. So I went in there and I turned the Openspot down to its lowest power setting that it is capable of. And so I did a signal audit. I walked around with one of my DMR radios and started checking to see on the lowest power setting, could the hotspot continue to be received in my house? And indeed, it could. So I said, okay, this is probably a good idea. Set your hotspots to the lowest power setting that is possible that maintains a signal throughout your house, but won't interfere with analog radios that you use inside the house. I went to the Pi-Star, so I turned this one down. The signal on the analog radio didn't really change much, and the hotspot, the Openspot, was not actually transmitting when the interference was being observed. So I then turned my attention to the Pi-Star, and that's where it was. Well, I found out where the TX power output, it's called RF level under the Pi-Star. What you do is you go to configuration, you go to the MVVMM host. Forgive me, I may be crucifying it. Well, you go to configuration expert and then MMVDM host, and then you scroll down the menu. It's usually, I think, in the first or second box. I think it's the second box actually, but it's called RF level, and it's near the bottom of that particular grid, and it was set to 100, which apparently is, well, I guess it's the standard or default setting of all Pi-Stars is 100. That might mean 100%. I don't know. I can't confirm that. So I wanted to know what would be appropriate. Obviously 100 is too much, because when this thing stopped transmitting, the signal on the analog radio returned to full quieting, and that repeater in Collinsville, 25 to 30 miles away, was easily receivable again. But the moment this thing keyed up again, it knocked it out. It didn't knock it out completely. It just knocked it down. And this thing operates on 441.050. So my Openspot operates on 446.075. So the repeater is on 444. Is it 444 or is it 442.775? It might be 442.0775, I think. Yeah, it is. I think it is 442.775. It was being knocked out by the 441.050 from this. So obviously it's close proximity and frequency. So I thought, okay, I'm going to play around with the settings and I'm going to see what I can get. So I thought to myself, okay, my house is small. My house is very small. So I don't need for this hotspot to be putting out much of a signal to cover my whole house. And that's all I want. I'm not trying to cover the outside. I'm only trying to cover the inside of my house with a signal. That's what these things are designed for. Mainly. Although you can use these for field day events and ham fests and that sort of thing. Flea markets, you name it. You can use these for those, by the way, in case you didn't know that, so long as you can provide it a 3G, 4G, or Wi-Fi signal to connect to, or some sort of internet connection. But, so I thought, okay, I'll go online and I'll do a bit of research on this. And I found a couple of hams talking about how some of them have set the RF level in these to 10. I even read some listings where they said they set it to 0 and 1. I tried 10. I tried 0. I tried 1. I tried 5. I tried 4. I tried 3, 2, and 1, and 0. I tried them all. And so I took one of my DMR radios into another room away from the hotspot. In fact, 2 rooms away, actually, because I wanted to make sure it covered the whole house. And I took it, and there's a computer in that room, and I adjusted the settings. And I kept playing around with it until I found the lowest power level I could achieve before the R2D2, before the digital signal started falling off the digital cliff. You know what I mean when I say that? The cliff? Yeah. So what was the magic number that was strong enough to keep a signal going in my house without falling off the cliff, but was still low enough so that it would only cover the inside of my house and not interfere with my analog radio? So I set the Pi-Star RF level to 4. And that works for me. Now my house is small. Okay, it's not very big at all. It's 2-story, but it's not very big. It just doesn't have a lot of square foot to it. So it's technically easy to cover. The problem is the hotspots are in the front of the house. They're not in the middle of the house, which would be optimum. If I were to find some way to put these hotspots in the middle of the house, I could probably get away with setting the RF level to a 3 or a 2. But because it's in the front living room area, I have to settle for 4, which is still not bad. I get no R2D2. I get no loss. The cliff does not happen. The signal does not fall off the cliff. And it works. So I set the open spots to the lowest setting that they could set. I think it's like 0.003 MW, or what is it, like -16 or something like that. But I've set the open spots to the lowest level that they are capable of, and that signal covers my whole house. The Pi-Star can go down further. You can bring the power level even below what the open spot is capable of. But apparently there is, when I take it down to a 3 or a 2 or a 1 or a 0, it falls off the cliff. The radio just, it's either nothing but R2D2, or the signal has dropped below the cliff to the point at which the signal bars on the radio are below 1 bar, and the squelch is not even opening. So, yeah. Apparently, RF level 4 does the job and keeps my radios from falling off the digital cliff. So, yeah. I wanted to provide this information to all of you out there. I wanted to provide some useful information so that in case you've got one of these, which most of us hams that are into digital voice rather than just analog voice, this could be a concern for you. If you're strictly digital only, then this may not be quite a problem for you. But I still have my foot in the door with analog. Okay, I still have a foot in the door, and I don't want to interfere with my analog radios in the house and have these boys knock them out. I don't want to do that. So I'm going to use the most minimum, absolute minimum RF necessary to get these guys to put a signal into my house without knocking my analog radios out of the water. So anyway, I hope this was useful to some of you. I hope it was. Again, this may or may not be a problem for a lot of you, but to those of you who may have analog issues, maybe being caused by a hotspot that's too powerful or set with their power level too high, this is a solution. This is a solution for you. With the Openspot, it's really easy to adjust, but with the Pi-Star, you have to hunt for it. It's buried in the menus. It's there. Let me see if I remember right now. Configuration, Expert, DVM host, and then scroll down to the second paragraph area, the second zone. And in that grid, go down near the bottom. You'll see RF level. Again, it looks like it's defaulted to 100 for this. You're going to want to set it much lower than that if you want to keep your analog devices free and clean of interference. So good luck, and I hope this helped. 73 for now.